Pleasure to be able to call in this evening and join in with the comrades there and giving some insight and giving a report on this absolutely not only historic but just amazing and incredible time and struggle and space that we were able to be in. I really did feel so honored and both humbled. You know, I listened to Imani's kind of report, and it was very thorough. That was so awesome, comrade. He did cover many aspects of some of the same feelings and experiences that I had. You know, I'll just jump right into my own kind of personal analysis and expectations and what I saw. I went expecting this major fight for water. And it was, and it is a major fight for water and against, you know, this pipeline that is going to be intruding upon sacred and indigenous grounds. But, you know, once we got there and I had a chance to actually kind of feel the energy and feel the spirit and really observe beyond just you know, some basic political write-up in some article, I came to understand that it was bigger than just water. This moment and this struggle is also about the fight for indigenous sovereignty. It is about, you know, a people's right to exist and breathe. You know, just like, you know, Eric Garner, you know, it is a struggle for liberation, you know, against not only the destruction of land and natural resources, but against greed and the corporations and the oil companies and the ruling class and the super rich. And, you know, we were able to, as we were driving, we saw some of the homes, you know, off of the reservation. And it's, you know, it's obvious there's some big money floating around in that area. But unfortunately, those resources are not being, you know, used for the rightful people of that land. This was not only a political struggle, but it was also a cultural struggle and as well as a class struggle. You know, again, going back to sovereignty and the right to exist on your own terms. You know, I listen to indigenous peoples talk about their language being stripped away from them. You know, their custom dress and custom and traditional ways of living and doing things be stripped away from them. You know, either forced assimilation or forced basically imprisonment. You know, on these reservations. I also realized that this was a major historic moment, you know, not just politically and culturally, but just for the sake of history. You know, I do believe that the quote I heard from Phyllis, which was the sister organizer of the main camp, was that there were 267 nations that had been accounted for as of Saturday, that had all come to convene and set their differences aside for the sake of the survival and memory and tradition, you know, of their peoples. And, you know, I don't believe something like that has happened, you know, from most folk that I was listening to, that something like that hasn't happened since Wounded Knee, where you have the youth, the elders, the women, the men, the children, you know, all standing in one wave of resistance and pride and this collective urgency and collective sense of organization and memory, you know, being passed down for the next generation. You know, on our call last night, Monica asked, you know, about Leonard Peltier. Did we hear Leonard Peltier's name mentioned? And, you know, I was really inspired and empowered too to hear all various different kind of sets of this, you know, of this struggle and movement there mentioned Leonard Peltier's name. So, I mean, among all the various different camps, which Imani laid out really well, you heard Leonard Peltier's name, you heard Sitting Bull's name, you heard Russell Means' name, you heard John Trudell's name, really walking in the strength and energy and power and respect and love of, the former indigenous freedom fighters and lifting up, their political prisoners as well. You had this mix as well. And again, this was something that Imani did an excellent job of articulating. You had this mix of both like old tradition of drummings and the vocal renditions and selections, but you also had hip hop, and you had some rock mixed in as well. And so to kind of see the culture transcend through generations was also another experience. The high level of organization, which of course, we expect when the people are free of capitalism, when the people are free of racism and colonialism and imperialism, of course the people can be good organizers amongst themselves. So we only expected that. It's not like we went in thinking that, a massive indigenous folk can't organize themselves. They were organized before they were colonized. They were organized before white supremacy, decimated their multitudes of people. So, but, the school, the medical center, the full kitchen, a kitchen that consisted of a pantry, a main cook area, a serving line, a food prep area. It was very, very laid out and well organized. The clothing center, where you could get anything from personal supplies to blankets and blankets, and there was a really communal feel to the whole 4 days. A sense of self among the people, self-actualization, but a sense of self that was also very selfless. Everyone was very helpful to each other, eye contact and greetings of peace and love and respect. Truly made you feel welcomed, even for those who were, non-indigenous. I think for myself too, what was really majestic about, and really revelational for myself, it's for me, even when you strip away the politics, there's something called spirituality, and I'm really in touch with my own sense of spirituality, and being amongst the indigenous, their connection to the earth, the water, the natural elements, the air, the animals, whether it be the animals that crawl and that are small, the emphasis on, dogs without leashes, not to offend anyone there in the space, but no, that small nuance actually was a telltale reflection to me. The notion of not dominating anything or anybody, walking in a sense of oneness with all the life forms that are around you. And so that took the political and the class and the cultural struggle and really just elevated, the atmosphere, in regards to, the connection of the people. There were a few negative experiences or negative aspects of the 4 days that we were there, and it was something that multiple leaders spoke on, and it was something that people were very conscious of and aware in the space, which was the level of repression in the form of arrest. Brother Imani, laid out Cody Hall's case and how he became a target of the state, but also, other more militant youth, out of the Red Warrior camp, having these warrants placed out on them. And the same day we left, hey, there's 21 21 protesters, arrested there on the grounds. The presence of surveillance was not something that tried to hide itself at all, at least not in the form of helicopters, multiple drone sightings, and also planes. Over the very rich ceremony on Saturday, it's a packed house. All various different nations are going to this formal ceremony of presenting their flags and also presenting gifts and offerings to the people and to the organizers and to the council. And, you have this massive drone that comes down and hovers really low, over the assembly. And, it was not only disruptive, but it was also to let people know that, that we are watching you. It was an intimidation ploy. The checkpoints, it wasn't a very intense exchange, but we did go through a lukewarm checkpoint with the National Guard. I was driving, Sarah sitting in the front seat, and it was this awful, funny moment, and I have to tell this. We're sitting in the car, and we're about maybe 3 or 4 cars back from the checkpoint where we get up to where the National Guard is either going to ask you questions or ask you for your identification. And we are trying to decide what approach that we're going to take and who we're going to be. Are we going to be a church group? And are we going to bust out some old spirituals and gospel songs? Or are we going to go on the offensive? And in the end, Sarah took out her video camera as we are approaching the National Guard, and I was ready with my license to show, but it was actually unnecessary. What they were really doing was just kind of flexing their presence. They weren't checking for anyone's formal ID, not at this moment in time, but they were letting you know that we're here. They were letting you know that, you best be on your best behavior while you're here. I think some next steps, I will conclude, after this juncture. I'm not asking myself, both as a member of Workers' World Party, as a vice presidential candidate, but also I left just asking myself as a black man, how do I bring this back to my community? How do we bring this back to the party? How do we bring this back and articulate it through the radical aesthetic right now that we call the movement? And I think we really have to do more, comrades, in uplifting the indigenous struggle. I think we have to do more in really amplifying this history and really fleshing it out politically. We do mention it slightly in one of our points, I believe it's point number 2 on our 10-point plan. But while I was in Salt Lake City with Summer and Wilden, after the post-conversation from the forum that we had, there was an indigenous sister there. And she mentioned to me, and this was long before Standing Rock became a thing, at least kind of mass publicly anyway, but she mentioned, hey, it would be really nice if there was a point that dealt strictly just with the indigenous and native people's struggle here against colonialism, against white supremacy, against cultural appropriation, and for autonomy and sovereignty. And, I think we have to do more in connecting this struggle with the Black Lives Matter movement, connecting this struggle to the Palestinian struggle, connecting this struggle as well to the Latino struggle, and immigration reform, and even through a lens of anti-capitalism and anti-racist and against white supremacy. I think this, what this last 4 days or 5 days, really did for me was really just deepen, my sense of interconnection um, how all these various different struggles, not only connect in a theoretical way, but how they connect in a very practical, living form of struggle way. And I definitely took it as a personal challenge to aid in that process. So thank you, comrades. So if there's any of you all in the room that helped to donate and contributed in any way, shape, or form with the conference calls and kind of helping us prepare, that was really, really appreciated. The party itself had an amazing showing, and not a showing as a campaign. And I'm very proud to say we didn't go there, trying to convert folks to workers' world. We didn't go there passing out newspapers to everybody during ceremonies. We went there as revolutionaries to serve, to stand in solidarity, to be a part of the people, to be a fabric of the people, interwoven into this struggle. Not there preaching at people, but to help and to serve. And that's what we did. We worked in the kitchen. We volunteered in different areas. We touched bases with all different encampments. We made donations to all the different encampments. And we took a step back and we reflected about both the positives and the negatives, and also, how we can help build. And I think Imani already, has sat with and helped prepare the next group coming out of New York there. So I was really impressed and really honored, and thank you so much to all of the comrades who helped make this happen.